Hello, YouTube. When I was a kid, there were a couple interbranch families associated with investigators, further interbranch foreign. And I didn't understand the extent of it, but I understood it was tied to a quick evil that you just ignore because you know it's not. And if you have, in other words, if you have parents, they teach you that people are good, and it's not their, there are standard, manifest, constant investigations, natures of investigations, of police, foreign and domestic, agreed to shared policing and value nature systems that were set up tactically ulterior from actual value nature systems means, for example, in relationship to what Native Americans are talking about, in relationship to freedom of speech's needs by equality and as equality of fact treatment nature. And what they were doing that we have not realized by most opinion natures was just writing other into databases. No, in other words, measuring to exploit built live progressions tied to built needed to justify live progression cover-up nature roles as identities like little cells, all identities positive onto an identity together that is negative value nature progression. Each modern nation has had a thematic suit and tie counter to it, commonly not understanding distinctly and non-distinctly, because the Campus Marcius of Internation Sciences that revealed this before criminal re-engineering of Internation Sciences was with and as the value of actual science before its criminal re-engineering at areas and states levels. Areas and states levels and opinion natures are tactically maintained victim-predator tools to be facilitated, used, and needed hid by what was behind Fox CT, bringing Los Solitos, especially for undercover police, because it also recorded confessed involved with database solution stacking and with crimes with doctors, with their patients, also ones with undercovers, also juxtaposed with tricks with service peoples, like fire departments and EMS families and stuff like that, patients of doctors. In words, behind what's not, like those sick reports, real or made up, especially if made up, about all those girls raped by the Olympic people, by doctors involved, because we have doctors who are investigators recorded and confessed involved on a huge scale with Connecticut hospital campuses, with state forensics labs tied to this. Every campus I went to sequentially was with strangers made confessions also tied to recorded interbranch, juxtaposed undercovers and uses of juxtaposed, proven, and further recorded overt federal criminals of all different kinds of sick natures in their crime acts facilitated by, in other words, say we have a job site. We have all different nations. In other words, they could play markets games and stuff like that. So they have agreements where they agreed to have each people positioned undercover, which I was never told by anybody, but that's recorded, but it's also recorded, denied by standards, recorded criminally foreign influenced through this originally, because this is the nature of what needs to be understood and explained in relationship to our founders' fact treatment nature slavery, having to hide, worse than hide, roles with the extent of their roles putting up the Constitution, but having to hide and not being able to talk about or leave record of proper of the what was being used, what the forced lies, the forced sensibilities, the forced ignored things, the forced exploited things that they weren't allowed to talk about what they were being used for rhetorically. In other words, to leave fake sides. They're still recorded doing this. Because there are people tied to this now. The reason I'm bringing this up, they're also recorded pretending and maintaining naive fact-cheating nature courts to make mistakes on purpose as fake fact-cheating sides to maintain, in other words, the wrong outcomes, criminally foreign influenced victims, but victim predators only everyone modern nations made to only understand through lie progression, cover up natures and needs. Natures too, because then you can't reveal your, in other words, that's why people weren't allowed to say white or black about the overt sick. There was also simultaneous laws way crazier than witch trials. And their motivations for that weren't with drugs. And their motivations aren't really honest when they pretend they think that it was about drugs. Those are things used to obfuscate, breaching method obfuscate criminally foreign influence human opinion natures. With and as recorded modern agencies' criminal incompetence regarding the breaching method that was entrenched before our nation's founding. Here and there. That's why no one knows how to talk about Mao. Mao was in the trap before the Civil War. The same exact trap. He didn't have freedom of speech like our founders. They had the force to react. What they did was put the Constitution up. Trick everyone to have to fight before they were ready, because not only before they were ready, it was already a method that was entrenched to exploit the faces that they knew they were going to come out of that. No one's going to stay in that. They were forcing with crazy laws before we had cars. The home styles built today. They could have built them better then before we have cars. Tactically denatured relationship to nature. You have water access constant through time. Poverty. No one ever enabled that to be the garden. You see what I'm saying? We have a negative relationship. This is why the sciences share an identity, as demonstrated by the predicate. Its value simultaneously within as positive relationship to itself, simultaneously, inherently, actively, and progressively with English, simultaneously with the predicate act being simultaneously, inherently, actively, and progressively negative. Positive's identity of values relationship to itself as a value of progression also, positive or negative, as evolution's cause or as leads to hadiths. Another lawyer. Now, so what I'm saying is not debatable, but we have, just like originally we have courts motivated to need to pretend things are debatable that are not debatable, so they can torture people to not say anything by stacking natures and roles of crimes, formal and with areas and intercampus through time. So it means the database solution stack. For example, now with confessions, I haven't read Acts in the Old Testament, but the beginning of the Old Testament says all you need to know is this part right here. All the people of the sciences come together. See, also, we need to discern pseudo-ratiocination and how ratiocination are constant, are valued simultaneously together too, in relationship to our correlation natures, simultaneous value, inherently, actively, and progressively, scientifically, progressively has a value, positive or negative, per what is the relationship that finite, active, and progressive have, per what was is ordered before, and then has the value of all finite per the bond, per the phenomena of its relationship to us as a quality of diffusion, positive or negative. So, in other words, I never had And I still don't have personal bad feelings, even though I try to make it. And even though they tortured me, they were sexually harassing little girls and their mothers, recorded with police, with doctors, and with the EMS families, and with criminal justice families, and with interbranch families. Their motivations for it were recorded, tied to this. You have to go back in time where they were victims, but as victim predators. See, if I describe them as victims, what is necessary to describe the organized crime that use color with fact treatment, that use worse than witch trials against every single person as a slavery method, then to keep everyone, when they tried to get out of this, perpetually self-justified as, worse, what they call compromise, as standing lie, progression, cover-up natures, because it's Oz. It's Oz. There are three natures of Oz. There are three natures of Oz. Three natures of zero. It's negative value nature if it's not all three positive onto themselves, as the self identity. We are an identity of value discernment system. All parts of our body, all cells, or I'm not a doctor, we are an identity of value discernment system, which is one identity of value onto itself, onto our parts of itself, which was a perfect value progression since before the phenomena of matter was juxtaposed to and as the value of a bond, distinctly with Earth in relationship to the rest of space. Just like our identity is distinct onto each part of our body, to each organ distinct, but with simultaneously distinctly and non-distinctly. Nothing I'm saying is for impressions. This is about a nature of the law. Well, we're going to talk about organized crime. I'm not a lawyer, not a criminal, not a police force, not army. Boxing is every science. Boxing. Boxing from rest. Boxing. Yes. So this is also recorded, tied to uncharged, original, and progressed victim predator criminal uses of kids that lose their family members young, of the sensibilities of people consciously woven as a criminal insidiousness nature takes a positive. They needed to defend that, but also that per a method, the areas were set up tactically denatured, tactically engineered through other motivations and needs invested to blame it on other causes, not others. For a breaching method that came before and then has the value of all modern nations, unrealized as victims, but as victim predators. We have the shared enemy. All we have to do is admit it. Then we're a nature that could, like, in other words, the nations of Africa and of every nation are divided from our common bodies means into pseudo-identities here, there, into natures of opinion, justifying that as a quality of fact treatment nature that perpetually will never be able to justify that and be able to take any free correlation nature's means to demonstrate how that is preventing finite, active, and progressive value connection, which is how discernment of the identity that causes evolution is made. It is sustained by removing what is not science. See, we have science engineered. We have natures of all identities of jobs, engineered natures of wealth, engineered to maintain fact treatment nature as a weapon to all areas per methods, maintaining this, even kings, even queens, even pharaohs, even chiefs, maintaining this where leaders' voices simultaneously, distinctly and non-distinctly, are not let anything but entertain pseudo-positive opinion natures with states and areas recorded in collusion with other nations, but it's internation tactically, methodically, effectively, as a fact treatment nature racket original and perpetual, blaming out other and others, maintaining us all opinion natures formal, blaming out other and others, already having been invested as victim predator fact treatment nature reactions, convictions, personal, not just formal. I mean, convictions in the mind. In other words, where they say how to treat the American Revolution, how to treat what was recorded, the same breaching method that was against Mao Zedong commonly and against our founders commonly, still entrenched here with crazy psychologists, with what was it called? Slavery. Physical slavery, Jim Crow laws, even in the 19th, 20th century. That's still everyone not let explain the recorded crime method that was database illusion stacking against everyone, and then that was being invested to need multi-front fake sides. See, that was just recorded, because this is also recorded tied to people who grew up with sex offender cliques, interbranch tied and relevant to the rest of them, and tied to the principal sex offender just sentenced the other day. And to add companies and with men and women recorded and confessed, involved all different natures of crimes with kids through time, with interbranch actors, like a Fienza family, with a WFSB with an advertisement on the day they sentenced the sex offender principal, because these guys are recorded tied to worse people that were doing worse with the guy's same campus, and with the guy, and with a previous, when I was a kid, a principal, Murphy, his daughter. I never had a personal conversation with her. A number of men and women recorded and confessed involved with like drug crimes and uses of those kids for witness reception crimes, and in other words, witness crimes with that, and evidence crimes that facilitated them to acts and natures that they would have to perpetually hide as ones for crime acts roles, with areas, illusions tied to and as recorded roles that were used to justify crime acts and methods recorded, proven in cases, and further recorded and confessed, like a Ninth Circuit proven sequence shift from right inside the court, right before the Trade Center attack, and then tied to that proven led to his 2006 case with federal criminals from my town and intercity that were tied to recorded and confessed crime rolls with kids in my grades growing up, tied to the confessions, interbranch, and actors with people I only saw for brief moments. And you know how you see people just for a second when you're growing up in a grammar school, and you remember their name, or because it's repeated to you in a weird way, and you remember someone's name, but you don't know them. That's recorded, preemptively exploited, per what is connected to the sex offenders, also of other natures of crimes against each age of fact treatment nature, also recorded effectively, affected through experts on like child abuse, woman abuse. Those people are being used to facilitate it. And they know I can demonstrate this because it's recorded, because they've been using them for witness fabrications where they're making up names. That's why people are motivated to pretend they know other people. That's why people are motivated to pretend to have economic interests that they tried to do identity theft and things like that, and or set up other people to do it for that reasons, especially like North End of Hartford, recorded worse than criminal incompetence with the treatments of science regarding impositions upon this nation, upon every modern nation from the same thing originally instilled. It was as recorded unfathomable what they could accept. Right there, right where the Connecticut River is constant, the Connecticut River. When you have a constant supply of water, and you have poverty, and you don't have garden, you have a problem. You know what I'm saying? You're not free. Hartford was engineered by the people. What George Washington had to leave with slavery was his slavery. He knew that. He had even with the French general, he could only semi-count or extort what was in Hartford, Connecticut, Wethersfield, Connecticut, internation entrenched since before his birth, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. That's why they had to sleep in this town, meet with the French general. They had to semi-counter extort what was extorting them there. It was extorting England. It was a criminally re-engineered, ancient Campus Martius, making it semi-ancient times carried a ill manifest, justified that everyone was blaming on other and others for a method to invest everyone doing that to all areas and states perpetually, and to methodically maintain it. That's why it's completely fact-cheaping nature when they say we're victims, but victim predators when they brought shock and awe, because you can't defend that and understand ourselves, which is being criminally foreign influenced. You can't have that defended by the only people we have for the defense of that when they're pretending they believe physical delusions, and when they really have physical delusions, like regarding. In other words, that's why the president says could be some fat guy on his couch. In other words, we know that our nations have criminality with psychology that they're aware of, but they're directed not to pretend they're not medical experts. But it has nothing to do with medical experts, because they're just faking conversations and forging names, and this is recorded. This is with and as the value of the investigators of the Trade Center, there and here, fake sides that had crime rolls because they were covering up their deeds that were invested to motivations, needs to hide what the state manifest investigations are for. Keeping it like state police and stuff associated with the areas and with state forensic labs and with other forensics and like body dumping and connections to hospitals and policing with that and chemicals and stuff like that and the drugs and stuff like that. So the opiate crisis, they're just putting people in, they're putting fake medical information. They're putting other people's pee to pretend that it's theirs. I put one from the toilet. You know why I did that? Because there was the child sex offender recorded. One tied to the one the principal just sentenced for being a child sex offender. Now, they said when I was trying to report that they had the guy tied to the guy I was trying to report and his wife, I think, reported. But anyways, recorded people with the name Dylan since I was a kid. Recorded and confessed involved with military families, foreign and domestic, with tied crimes and confessions. See, now that's where you need to have crime acts reported, and what's where you need to talk about to demonstrate the overall recorded organized crime method of a breaching method. In other words, you're stacking databases of allusions each time tied to recorded and confessed, totally recorded campus placements with CCSU, with Trinity College, as victims, but as victim predator weapons. As with Yukon too. I've never even been there. Associated with John Mayano confessed and recorded tied to this. Crimes with all kinds of police, all kinds of levels, associated with Wethersfield police, all levels, and their family members were criminally recorded and confessed as victims, but as victim predators through time already. Real bad with evidence fabrication attached, needing to, while they cover that, they're needing to cover lies, areas, and states from presidents. They're needing to defend means to cover lie progression natures, to hide their actually recorded natures. Why President Trump says fake news. Fake news. And they won't let them, because they're forcing opinions that are dishonest, because they're involved with fake news. Both sides of stories. That's attaching child victims and their family members being attached to fake conversations. Because of how the recorded women experts and child experts are being used by the sickest men and women in their inherent nation. Criminal with psychology. They're just making up things about people, pretending fake conversations, attaching them to fake behavior, exploiting all exceptions in life, and with everything. They have a crime method that they're maintaining means. In other words, a torture method. That's also what they brought torture into this, because they know, also recorded, they were consciously involved with that. We have our agencies and their family members involved with things that you can't, and we pretended, what is it called? Pretended studies and things like that. You can't defend that and us at the same time because you're a sick degenerate. We have this recorded through time. We have them saying that people have conspiracy theories behind the back because of their roles forging doctors' names, attaching kids of all ages to fake relationships to doctors they never had. There was a kid I never met named Chris Shin, associated with plays and stuff like that. He had a cleft lip. Also, that recorded and confessed tied to crimes with it's very plausible he got that from drugs, because the way these doctors, men and women, recorded using drug crimes, by setting up fake things in databases. They're going to people that are doctors are recorded and confess, consciously pretending they don't understand. Recording and confess, threatening and demonstrating they're aware they have crime method roles and nature roles and acts roles with various natures of courts at once through time. This was tied to the criminal uses of the victims of each of these investigations, interstate and worse than interstate tied with the shootings, with what really leads up to it, with a method effectively having them defend themselves in investigations and fact-treatment nature treatments, saying, oh, it's just the way it is and stuff like that, perpetually not letting it demonstrated how the women and kids experts are being exploited by the sickest men and women. Progressively through time, they're covering live progressions, investing people into it like a Bob Chase. In other words, police were threatening and forcing to sustain worse on the kids in my area, and through some of all victims, but all victim predator reactions to what was directing this through our homeland and foreign criminal influence, because they need to cover up live progressions there and here because they lied. They had native roles in the past. We have Russians against Russians with psychology tied to courts, tied to fact treatment nature, tied to a crime method recorded where they pretend that they're not supposed to speak medical information, so they're using that to stack information and to pretend they don't realize, pretending not to hear people, pretending they don't understand people, pretending not to realize that they don't let people talk at all. And they don't even fight to talk, they're just following the rules normal, specifically so they could pretend that time was used to talk. Specifically so they could pretend that the people had been behavior they don't. Specifically tied to recorded online and criminal methods in courts. Criminal natures recorded with the courts involved with the intercampus crime acts and sick natures through time. See, now there's a victim. I don't know. I had been like her president for like briefly after everyone in my grade graduated. This was recorded. Everyone they directed people to make confessions about me. This stuff tied to the principal sex offender just sentence, and to his daughter, recorded and confessed, lied to about me, and you involved with interbranch evidence, crimes, rumors spread formal and by federal criminals associated with them since before. And already ones that were already there, were associated with interbranch families. Each campus I went to, then the middle school still has further recorded and confessed. This is intercampus too, with the police, but it's also with the doctors. So there's I forgot her name, but Mr. Murphy and his daughter. I never had a class with her either. Also recorded and confessed with the doctors, men and women, with the recorded for sustained sexual crime acts since before. See, when I went to report this, I started trying to report other people. There was a Joshua Julian, who was also one of the ones tied to the people who were pretending to know me, to my family behind my back. And I didn't know it at the time. And tied to people that I only know from recorded their roles with confessions in federal crime acts, like a Hansen family. Also tied to investigators recorded and confessed associated with crimes before, and then after the death of an untimely death in a house tied to Mark Halpern and his poor mother, which there are proofs that she didn't kill herself. Because also, so Bob Chase told me that he was supposed to read a police report to me. He didn't read it to me. They're also recorded and confessed interbranch that they've been stacking fake police reports, multiple forms, so they can adapt and pretend they don't understand things. Also recorded and confessed intercity police, intercity families, and fake witness fabrication treatments with interbranch with Wethersfield police. In other words, they can have witnesses made up, tied to Joshua Julian, recorded and confessed with the rest of the worst tied sexual predators. Online, ERICKNERR, and a DAVEKNERR, for sustained through and hid recorded crime acts and sequence shifts and confessions of the principal sex offender that they hid, because it's with a recorded crime method, not relationship to parents and families with the school still, but they're hurting most of the kids through time too. These are criminal justice cliques where they're attaching and like internature of courts and the internature of the same courts with on-off campuses. And like with ties to them undercover and overtly federal criminal, with acts, with crime acts. See, and they're sequence shifting, covering up how easily they were recorded, able to exploit the forced, forgiving, abridged fact treatment nature, abridged correlation nature, forced defended opinion natures with the north end of Hartford against themselves and our nation, because they were never giving any other chance. And we're forced to entertain emotions and passions that are dishonest per the same recorded group, distinctly and non-distinctly, with sick natures with each campus in Wethersfield and with Hartford, consciously, distinctly, and non-distinctly maintaining correlation nature sabotage, maintaining people roles with database solution stacking. The Wethersfield PTO Facebook page, and people associated with the Wethersfield police chief and with his family members, extended and immediate, and with the Joe DeMoro and with his family members, immediate, extended, and with John Maiano, his family members, extended, immediate, and with Christine Bedard / Tardet, her family members recorded, extended, and immediate, recorded and confessed involved with the force sustained and tortures of family members and of kids, with force sustained rape threats, sequence shifts to hide it, like with the ERICK and ERR, with some people who use the name Joey Quest. And through time, tied to my past and previous neighbors in the same house, recorded and confessed by themselves and others, tied to crimes, roles, and acts with untimely deaths tied to Trinity College illusions they spread, and had uses were with the worse than untimely death alone, tied to that. Off-campus shootings, tied to the off-campus people with that, with like drug cliques, with evidence, crime predators, victims, but victim predators, recording, confessed, coerced to evidence crime roles with interbranch police. And it was already recorded and confessed that I've been trying to report that because it had been confessed to me by people who then gave shifting answers about it being involved with MPs, and then switching it to being about court police. But it was also the whole time juxtaposed with confessions and recorded crime roles and uses of people and of databases and of of words coming from CCSU, illusions, bad crime acts. Like a Cohen is recorded and confessed involved with the crimes with the child sex predator cliques. Recorded. And I don't know what he said too. He communicated to me in front of Officer Magnanos, and that officer also that they made threats. He also brought up Local 230. He also mentioned he brought up Steve Manos, and I didn't have any reaction because I knew whatever I was saying he was going to use for criminality, because those are people recorded and confessed who were tied to crimes with federal criminals that had a daughter in my grade, that had other kids in my grade that had drug dealing through other federal criminals that were co-defendants with a former director of the FBI, former director who was co-defendant Robert Luskin in that case, former director of the FBI. And that was ongoing at the time of my father's death. There's also Leahy family, and these are people with the child abuses and with the crimes with the people who were to help the women and kids being used to facilitate them with sick men and women who just write what the investigators tell them in the databases, and with present cliques. Criminal with them with areas through time, confessed from strangers through time progressively. Formal and informal and private tied to that, like a Bob Chase. Supposed to read me the police report. No one ever let me see a police report. They pretend writing, and they stack database illusions and evidence crime methods, evidence perception crime methods within as the treatments of cases originally and still. Per motivation as victim predator, but only understand through life progression, cover-up nature's needs, through areas maintained, criminally foreign influence sciences, originally still. That's why it's important to understand how this was intercampuses and worse than internation. Also, this was recorded and confessed to me by internation families. So we have even our own police who don't tell us. No, but no one understands, and because they're facilitated to need to hide from acts, to pretend they don't understand because they know they understand they did bad, and they do bad already through time. They understand that they can't. They have to pretend they can't understand how to think. They have to pretend that they don't understand that correlation nature is a simultaneous value, finite, active, progressive. Before this, in the progression's value, per what was is perfect before this, and it's going to stay perfect value progression. And it's going to stay lethal IDs until we have people's free speech saved from this. There was also, they said Christian was involved with New York plays and stuff like that. So they have the sensibilities of CCSU also recording confessed with, like, because they have the sensibilities of theater maintained where with all jobs, where they say, oh, you just want to keep your job. And those opinions are being used as breaching weapons against people. In other words, it's worse. That's where then even when they say, then they make the women's rights separate. It's because there's no integrity. See how they had Lisa Ling go and show about how other police are juxtaposed. You know, in other words, they're seeing this, but there's a value nature system where it's not reaching out to people with enough the right natures of jobs. But it's worse than that because of the natures of child predators through time.